Abuela's house was a split-level home. It had 2 floors, but the first floor was half buried in a hill that only left half of it, the garage part, accessible from the outside. The front door of the house opened up on a landing, with stairs leading up to the top floor, and another set running down into the basement. Abuela lived in the top floor. All the living areas were up there, and the basement was just used for storage. Before Mom was able to afford an apartment, we used to live in the basement on a set of tiny beds, wedged in between a bookshelf of old National Geographic magazines and the always leaning towers of boxes that were never to be opened. I liked it down there because it felt like the room was a hidden area, a secret room just for us. Mom liked it down there because it added a set of stairs between her and Abuela, one of the few deterrents from being drawn into a screaming fight. Which happened a lot. Abuela liked screaming fights, and it didn't matter who she was arguing with. When we moved out, the beds were moved to a room upstairs, and more boxes took their place. When visiting Abuela, I liked going down to the basement when the days were too bad to go outside. There was an old TV with dials on the front that only ever seemed to get 3 channels, and without Mom watching over me, I could crack open the box flaps to get a glimpse at what was inside. It was mostly clothes, but I still kept looking when I could. The basement was my castle and my wild jungles all at once. I didn't think there was a single inch of it that I hadn't explored. Until one day after school. After eating the required 1 more bite of a too large meal, I ran down the stairs and found that some stacks of boxes had been moved around. It wasn't strange. That often happened as Abuela stored things away like a squirrel, always fearing something would be stolen from her if she didn't work at keeping it hidden. It changed the pace of my play space and made it so that almost each time I went to play, I would have to rediscover them. This day, though, the shifting of boxes had revealed something I'd never seen before. There was a door set into the wall that was right next to the stairs. I was immediately curious and went to open the door. However, the knob was stubborn, and yanking on it made it clear to me that there was some rust keeping it closed. I stopped almost as soon as the first noises started to come from it. You see, I could play in the basement all I liked, but I understood that I was never supposed to be caught snooping, not by Abuela. Getting that door open would alert her immediately that I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do. And you'd better believe I minded Abuela when it came to getting in trouble. She wore wooden sandals everywhere, 2 inches thick, and the most painful thing ever when she took one off and came at you for doing wrong. I skittered further into the basement in case she'd heard the slight creaking I'd already caused, and just explored the rest of the shifted boxes. The door nagged at me, but I was able to put off the need to open it up. For a while. In the evening, around 6 maybe, I heard the TV upstairs go silent as it always did. That was my cue to close any boxes and go upstairs for the first part of the bedtime ritual. It was way too early to go to sleep, but Abuela had me change into my pajamas and say my prayers before she made us dinner. After which, I was to brush my teeth, stumble through another prayer in Spanish that Abuela would try to patiently coach me through, and then go to the small room with the beds me and Mom used to sleep in. I didn't have to go to sleep. I just had to be in my room. Abuela would come in to slather Vicks on my chest and under my nose, and then she would leave. Actually leave the house. She maintained that she went on a nightly walk for her health, but I knew she was just going down the street to meet with the closest thing to a friend she had, an older widowed woman with a lisp, a house full of lace and porcelain dolls who never liked to drink alone. I doubt either of them ever really understood what the other was saying, but I also doubt they were interested in talking. Once the front door closed, I was free to wander around the house until Abuela came back. Well, maybe free wasn't the right word, but as long as I didn't get caught, there would be no problem. So as soon as I heard the door click, I ran out to watch Abuela walk away. When I was sure she was far enough away, I ran down to the basement and the newly discovered door. The knob was more than just rusted. It was also sticky. like something had been gummed up in areas that needed to be freed to turn. It stubbornly refused to turn enough to unlatch. I spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes working at it, because I knew that sometimes you just had to be patient. That's what Mom said when she had to deal with rusted things anyway. The sound of it was loud. I'd been right to wait to try and open the door. There was no way Abuela wouldn't have heard it. When I did eventually get the knob turned enough to pull, even the hinges squealed loudly. Not that I paid any attention to the sound as I looked into this brand new room. The first thing I saw were boxes. Of course. Boxes stacked up neatly and taller than me. It took me a few minutes to realize that the room I was looking in wasn't all that much wider than the door I had just opened. I'd found a closet, one that was neatly placed underneath the stairs leading from the front door to the top floor. I was a little disappointed. I'd been expecting more from this secret door than just some storage space. But I eventually got over it. These were new boxes after all, and that meant there might be things other than clothes in them. There really weren't. I found that out as I started working through the stacks, peeking under flaps and climbing up the stacks to get to the next ones, because even clothes got heavy if there's enough of them. There was no way I was going to be able to pull any of them out of the closet, so I just climbed up and pressed myself against the walls enough to work through them all. I was getting towards the end of the closet, and the end of the safe time period to explore, when I noticed something that was finally interesting. Not in a box, but in the closet itself. The ceiling had been steadily coming down with the steps, but right where the landing started, there was an empty space that seemed to lead to the left. There was more storage space behind the wall I was leaning on, space that led to the areas under the stairs that led down into the basement. I wanted to see what was back there. It looked like a cave from where I was, but there were too many boxes still in the way. I was a small kid, but not small enough to wriggle through what space was available without shifting everything, and I started to do just that, working on one box at a time to inch them back and away. But my nerves got the best of me. I'd spent too long looking into the boxes, and Abuela might be home at any minute. I backed out of the closet and carefully shut the door before going back to my bed. All for nothing. Abuela was out longer that night than usual. I'm not sure how long because I fell asleep waiting and dreamed of exploring caves. The next day, I was restless in school. All I could think about was getting back and seeing what was really in that closet. The day seemed to drag by, but not as much as it did when I got off school and had to wait at Abuela's. The door was still uncovered and right there in front of my eyes, but I didn't even dare to touch it. I was almost shaking from excitement when I heard Abuela set off for her evening walk. The door was easier to open the second time, and I wasted no time getting to work shifting all the boxes, moving them all just enough so that I could wriggle through them, while also being careful not to lose the flashlight I had brought with me. The closet was lit in the front, but the further back I went, the darker it became. There were no more boxes when I was able to wriggle my way into the section underneath the landing. My light wasn't very bright, but I was able to see that the boxes stopped in an almost perfect line. I could just barely stand up fully in the new area without bumping my head in it. I think I might have been excited at having found this secret cave. I don't really remember, because that feeling didn't last long. Not when I turned around to the area underneath the basement stairs. It got smaller as it went back, and ended at what I assumed was the last step. I didn't pay much attention to that, though. What had me frozen were the pile of things back there. They were toys. Specifically, I realized after a few minutes of staring, they were Happy Meal toys. Every single one that I had gotten from the nearly daily meals and lost within a day. The longer I stared, the more I realized that these were the toys I had lost. They were all there, and they were all broken into pieces. Not just any pieces, but highly specific ones. There were piles of heads only, then a pile of left arms, a pile of right arms, a pile of legs, and a pile of torsos. That was only for the toys that had those pieces. There were other piles that seemed to be about shape, but most of the rest were just piles of assorted colors. All pink here, all orange there, just piles and piles of these broken bits. It was a lot of toys, more than even I thought I had lost. It confused me and upset me at first, but fear crept slowly over all that as I tried to figure out who had broken my toys. Abuela? She liked watching me play with toys, and never liked it when Mom would try to throw old ones away, so she was an unlikely suspect to me. But there wasn't anyone else who could have done it, right? The door had been so hard to open, though, like it had been shut for more years than I had been alive. The secret room around me suddenly didn't feel so welcoming anymore. It was a room, I realized, and I didn't want to find out for who or what. I was already thinking about eyes watching me from the dark, and that was enough to make me rush out of there, squirming through the spaces I had just made and feeling the boxes give way a little under my careless speed. I slammed the door shut and raced back up to my room where I made sure the door was tightly shut, and my old crib was pressed up against the door. I slept underneath one of the beds that night, with the flashlight held tight in one hand. The crib really wasn't much use as a barricade. I noticed that when Abuela woke me up the next morning, having easily pushed the door open. She never asked me why I moved the crib. In the light of day at school, my fear seemed more than a little bit silly. There hadn't been anything down there, and toys broke all the time. Abuela was crazy. Maybe she thought they were talking to her. It was possible she had thrown them all down there. I felt better when I got off the bus, but I still paused when I went back to the basement to put my ear up against the door and listen closely. I heard nothing, and the door was hidden by boxes once again the next day. I wouldn't see it again, although I'd stop every once in a while to listen to the stairs, until Mom got married and we moved to another state. Abuela's getting older, and one day she will pass on. We will have to go back to her house and sort through all of her boxes then. I'm kind of curious about what I'll find under those stairs now, but I'm not sure whatever I find there will answer any of my questions. Thank you for tuning in. If you like this story, hit that like button. Consider sharing and subscribing to the channel to be alerted to new uploads. If you'd like to see something specific on my channel, leave a comment below and I will look into it. Good night, everyone.